how much more exciting does it get than springtime bass fishing? But just as exciting as it can be, you can have a strong cold front come through and blow all that great action. Kevin Van Dam this week tackles one of those early spring cold fronts as we go in depth with Kevin. Rick Clunn then is going to talk to us about the negative thoughts in the art of angling. First up, we got Stacy King giving us some great football jig techniques in our Fishing in 4.
This ought to be a fish cast right here. No wonder they're in there, man. Oh, there he, oh, God. He knocked the snot out of it and I didn't hook him. Oh, I missed another one. They're right there. I got them wide now. There's one on a football jig. He's a puller. Come here, baby. Boy, I tell you what, this football jig has been one of the hottest, barring the shaky head worm, probably the hottest technique on the professional bass circuit this year. A guy named Jim Morning from up in Minnesota, he started this craze, or pretty much, you know, people have been fishing it forever, but he started doing it with a big 1-ounce football jig about 10 years ago. I'm gonna release this pretty fish back. The guys on the tournament circuit are doing so well with a football head jig. It's just a tremendous way to catch big bass. And I'm going to show you a couple retrieves I like to use, and then I'll show you how I rig my football jig. And there's several different retrieves that work good with this jig. A lot of guys, like those guys up north that started this craze, they'll throw that thing out there and let it go to the bottom, and they just point their rod right at it and just reel it real slow. And let that old jig just click and clank in those rocks. If you got much brush around, that doesn't work too good because you're going to be getting hung up a lot. But some guys like to shake it and hop it just like a regular standard old jig. And I fish it both ways. You got to let the fish tell you exactly how they want it. Just fish it until you get a few strikes. Look here. Golly. I mean, I start to bring that thing up in one smack. This is a Bass Pro Shops Enticer football jig. It's one I really like because it's got that recessed eye. The eye of the hook's recessed into the lead there, and it seems to me like that will hop over cover better. See, when you've got your line tied to it down here and you're pulling that thing kind of tends to rock when it's coming over those, any kind of structure cover on the bottom. It tends to rock up, and it has less of a tendency to get hung up than some of the ones that have a big eye sticking way out of the head. And the first thing I do with the jig is when I get it is I want to trim that skirt off a little bit. So I'll take it and I'll hold it up and I'll fold the front part of the skirt up over the head and hold it with my thumb and forefinger in my left hand and let the back end dangle. And I'm going to trim that back end even with the back of that hook, just like that right there. Then I'm going to let the rest of the skirt flare down over the jig like that, and if it's too long, I'm going to cut that off too. I'm going to trim that down so it's relatively even with the back of the hook. And the main reason I want to do that is you don't want that skirt getting in the way of the plastic. And then the weed guard on most jigs you buy is pretty long. It comes way down over the point of the hook, and I'll take and trim that off, and I want it about even with the point of the hook, so when a bass mashes down on it, that weed guard's not hitting steel. It's missing the steel, but you don't want to get it too short because that'll make you get hung up more. You just want to get it about even with the point of the hook. And I'll take these scissors and come in and rest them against the point of that thing and clip that off like that and get that just about even with the point of the hook. And then I'll put my trailer on, and I'll take and thread that thing on, bring it up, stick it up over the catch so that it stays on good. And there you got you a good jig with a good hook, good trailer, skirt length right, catches big bass.
An early spring cold front, rising muddy water, clear bluebird skies. It doesn't get any tougher than this. Let's see how Kevin's going to handle this one as we go in depth as he explains.
It's early March, we're at Toledo Bend, one of my favorite places to be this time of year. You know, it's pre-spawn, water temperatures in the low 50s, perfect conditions to catch big pre-spawn fish in Texas. But you just never know about the weather.
I think filming these TV shows is easy. Fish are chomping out there. They're biting like crazy. And we can't get the cameras all wet, so. Oh well.
You know, I don't want to be out on the water when there's lightning, but if it's just rain, I'm going to be out there.
Trying to decide if that's coming this way or. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's just go and we'll go around the corner, and if we have to, we'll go to a dock.
The skies kind of cleared off and we started fishing. The lake's real low and there's not a lot of vegetation right now. I was fishing 6-7 foot deep flats and they got just a little bit of grass in them.
Well, we finally got a little window where it's kind of cleared out, but it rained so much. I mean, there's all these pockets are real muddy and the water's stained, but the lake's going to already start to rise. You know, that fresh water's coming in. It was a good warm rain. Those bass should, you know, they almost feel it immediately, and you know, they're gonna move shallower and get in this dirtier water. I'm gonna try a spinnerbait a little bit and see if we can get something going with it.
Toledo Bend is a big lake. It's an older lake and it has a tremendous amount of timber in it. And over the years, it's gotten hydrilla in it. It's a 186,000 acre impoundment on the Sabine River. We're fishing on the lower end of the lake in some of these large spawning bays that do have some hydrilla.
A really nice mud line right here blowing off this point. A lot of times those bass will use that as cover. They'll just run right down those mud lines and, you know, wait for bait fish. The bait fish like it too. A lot of food in the water when you have that mud blowing in the water and stuff. So I love to throw a spinnerbait down those clay points and where the mud's coming off there and mixing with that clear water.
With the lake being so low, it made the water extremely clear. You could see down 6-8 feet.
There he is. Oh man, he hammered it off this windy point. I just changed with this clear water to a real good shad pattern. That blue glimmer shad, or blue shad's one of my favorites when it's clear like this. And second cast. I'm gonna get back out there. The wind's blowing across these points and it's perfect conditions for a spinnerbait. You know, it's just a lot of flats with scattered grass on it, and I need a bait that I can cover a lot of water with. It's perfect for, you know, a spinnerbait or a jerkbait or a lipless crankbait. So I like throwing spinnerbaits, especially because they catch a lot of big fish. So we're gonna try that and see if we can catch some of these quality fish. There he is. That's a good one. Good one too. Oh boy. Look how he swallows it. That's how you want them to bite your spinnerbait. Trailer hook outside the mouth. Quality fish. Pre-spawn, just pulling up. Water's super clear. You can see down 6-7 foot right here. So I'm just throwing a blue shad, KVD Pro Model spinnerbait, and just kind of twitching it and jerking it and making it look like it's an injured shad. Double willow combination gives me the little faster retrieve. Those fish will just come up there and swallow it on days like today. Good low light conditions.
As the day wore on, I started seeing more signs of activity. Turtles swimming around, birds being active, occasional bait fish flicking, and I knew the bass would have to be active. I just had to find them.
One of the things that is so important for me is to follow the seasonal patterns. And in the spring of the year, it's all about fishing the flats. And on a lake like this that has hundreds and miles of flats, you know, you can be looking for a needle in a haystack. So it's important to cover water quickly. What I'm looking for good spawning flats is ones that have a lot of depth change within them. You know, little ditches and drains, depressions, irregularities. If the lake has grass, you want it, you know, where there's a good mix of grass. Like out here, there's clumps of sand with edges of grass. It's got the perfect scenario and all kinds of depth. It comes up to 3 foot, goes down to 7, 8, and 10. And you need a bait that you can cover a lot of water with, because you can spend a lot of time searching these areas out where there's no fish at. So cover a lot of water, use a reactionary type bait, keep the trolling motor on high, and then once you find those fish, that's when you want to slow down
with a soft plastic or a jig or something like that, and really work that area thoroughly.
You know, I encountered a similar situation in East Texas one early spring, cold front, rising muddy water. And what worked for me was flipping a black neon tube in the buckbrush, but it wasn't just normal flipping. I had to flip that thing in there and let it sit, sit, and sit, and sit. Watch the grass grow is what I'm trying to say. This might be something else that might work for you in same situations.
As the day wore on, the conditions didn't really change that much. Occasionally the wind would pick up for a little bit, then it'd calm back down. I just kept covering water. I knew sooner or later that I'd run into the bass. With this clouds, you know, a reaction bait is a good choice, but I haven't been able to get him to eat a spinnerbait very good or a lipless crankbait, so I'm going to stick with this jerkbait and see if I can't catch some quality fish. I've saw several nice ones with it. They just want that real erratic action out of it. I'm just jerking it real hard with short little pauses. The more casts that I can make and the more bass that I can show that wild shiner to, the more strikes I'm going to get. Oh, there he is. God, he hammered it. I could just see the edge of that sand right there. Oh. Fat one. I mean, that one's just moved up here. That's what you want. Those ones with a big belly like that, pre-spawn. That's the perfect spot right there. There's a point of grass. I got real light colored lenses on my sunglasses today, and it helps you on these dark days to be able to see. Now this water's gin clear, and these flats are only about 6-7 foot deep, and there's scattered grass and sand, and I'm trying to target those edges. There he is. There's a good one. There's a good one. Oh yeah. That's a good one right there. Big fat belly. I mean, stone colded the wild shiner. Couldn't even hardly get up out of the water. Look at the belly on that one. Black spots. That's a fat one there. That thing hit it so hard I couldn't even. I jerked it like that and the rod went straight back the other way. That's what you like when you're throwing a jerk bait, is when they are really hitting it like that. Those hooks just had them every which way. That's a fat one there. 5 of those in most tournaments would do pretty darn good right there. Wow. A couple of fish real close right here in this proximity. That's what these baits are so good at, is you can cover a lot of water quick, and then once you get a couple of bites, that's when you want to slow down and work that area thoroughly. There's probably quite a few fish in this little area. There's a huge flat out here, but some of the little ditches and depressions are going to hold more than others. So when you finally get them, slow down and work it real thoroughly with the bait you're using, and then maybe try another bait or two. I'm using fluorocarbon line. The fluorocarbon is real low and stretched, so when I snap that rod real hard like that, it really makes that bait jump in the water. I want that wild action. I want it as erratic as possible. There's one, and that fluorocarbon is what does it. I knew they'd have to be somewhere out here. He just hammered it too. Well, it took the rod away from me. This flat is so big, it's be hard right now. The fish are kind of in that mode where they're not real aggressive, and we've had some severe fronts come through, and you know, the action of that jerkbait is just something that they can't handle. The next morning, we woke up to a 180-degree difference from the day before. High bright skies, temperatures in the 30s, you know, cold, wind, tough post-frontal conditions. The bass know in these conditions that it's not conducive for them to feed. So I know that the strike zone is going to be a lot smaller, and I'm going to really have to make these fish react because they're not going to be feeding. The lake jumped up a foot overnight and it's gotten real dirty. Lipless crankbaits are really good. They got a lot of vibration, allows you to cover a lot of water, and you know, I'm just trying to see if maybe the bass moved in with this water that came up, or if they're kind of pulled out. But they shouldn't be far from the flats and the spawning areas where they left, so we're gonna keep working at it. There's a good one too. He's got me around a tree. Got him. He just hammered it. Boy, it's cold today. They're so sluggish you can't even jump.
He got all them black spots on him. You only see that in lakes where you got really healthy populations of fish. That's what's weird about that, those black spots where there's tons of bass. Only happens where you have lots of bass. He's right up there on the inside grass line. Now this cove's got a lot of timber in it too, which is that much more cover, but I'm still fishing these flats and just taking that bait and running it, throwing it up there onto the sand, and at kind of like a 45-degree angle, and just pulling it out until I hit the grass. And you hit the grass, you rip it free. When this bait flutters down, it's by design, it's got a little change in the sides on it, and it kind of wiggles as it flutters. It shimmies kind of down to the bottom, and they really can't stand that. It's a phenomenal lipless crankbait. Good fish right there. Big fish, big fish. That's the one I've been looking for. And he swallowed it. Yeah. That's the kind we're looking for. There we go. There she goes. God, there he is. Oh man, he hit it close to the boat. That's a good one too. I just caught a 5-pounder and got another one. He swallowed the red-eyed rattler. Look at that. That's a beauty. Big fat fish. Look, it's been up there. You can see that right there. See that? I can wipe the brown off. She's been up there rubbing on the bottom, getting in there, thinking about spawning. They're moving up onto these places today, and they're going to eventually spawn here. But
a lot of times on these post-frontal days, the bite is good real early, and then as the sun gets up higher and higher, it gets tougher and tougher. Unfortunately, I can't pick the days that I can go fishing. I got to catch them no matter what the weather's doing. So I just keep working hard at it.
Confidence is one of the most important things in your fishing. Next, Rick Clunn's going to discuss dealing with negative thoughts. It's this week's Art of Angling.
I think any of us that's been on this planet very long realize how important attitude is, and no matter what you do. As a kid, we probably got sick of hearing about it. You know, it starts early on from your father, your parents, from your teachers at school, from your coaches, you know, just pounding into you how important it is to have a good attitude, and pounding on those poor kids who maybe have a negative one at that point in time. And when finally we hear it so much, we really don't give it the gravity we should. But as we get older, and certainly in my case, I have discovered that it's ultimately the most important thing of all. And in fishing, it plays a huge role. You deal with a lot of negative variables in fishing, and so how do you handle those variables is very important. For example, most of the time we visualize, you know, we're sitting at home, we're planning this great fishing trip we're going to take, we're getting our tackle ready, we're thinking about how pretty the lake was the last time we were there. But all too often, when you finally get to the lake, that's not the case. You know, the conditions are bad from a fishing standpoint. It's windy, it's raining, there's more boat traffic in the area you want to fish than you were expecting. And we all have those thoughts. I have those thoughts. And so the key is, how do you deal with them? And what I normally do, and I'll give you an example here, is that if I get to my favorite area and all of a sudden I notice that there's, you know, I had a lot more wind on that bank than I was anticipating, I have the same negative thoughts. Man, I wish that wind hadn't been blowing on that bank. But immediately I try to consciously catch myself, and I try to cover up that negative thought with at least 3 positive thoughts. For example, well, okay, the wind is blowing on the bank, but that will keep the other fishermen out of the area because they like to fish calm, quiet coves. It'll also keep, the wave action will keep the fish aggressive for a longer period of time. It diffracts the light. It's kind of like a morning bite that's elongated. It also keeps your bait fish more active in the area, causing the predators to be still more aggressive. So that's simply all I'm trying to do, again, is have more positive thoughts about that day than negative ones. Ultimately, when you start implementing this positive attitude, you're going to have more fun. But the positive attitude translates really into more confidence in what you're doing. And more confidence translates into you make better casts, you work the bait better, you work it harder, you fish harder, and thus you catch more fish.